This video is brought to you by Surfshark. More info later on who they are and the massive discount that they have given to our community. So Mount & Blade 2 is now one of my obsessions. It truly is. It's rough around the edges, to say the very least, but it's without question one of the most addicting titles to launch in the past, I don't know, maybe 5 to 10 years, at least in my opinion. Not to mention the practically boundless paradise for modders to reign supreme. There will be Lord of the Rings mods, Game of Thrones, some sort of samurai thing, a Witcher universe mod, which looks pretty insane so far from the models that I've seen, a Vikings mod expansion, and a whole bunch more I cannot even think of right now, which will turn this game from something awesome into something nearly timeless. However, today I don't want to just sit here and praise the title, because it is extremely rough at this point, that much is admittedly true. Today I want to discuss tactics. The game is currently being patched at lightning speed. I did a top 10 tips video, and one of those tips, possibly more by the time this video actually goes up, has been already broken because they changed the skill values. I was considering an entire smithing guide video about the fastest ways to train and why it's so good, but then they adjusted all the values so it would have been obsolete the day after I put it up. They actually did it immediately the day after. But something that probably won't go obsolete or get changed is tactical combat tips. Combat in Mount & Blade 2 is one of the most notable selling points. Momentum-based open field battles or massive armies sieging and defending castles and towns. But within that framework, there are certain tips and tricks I wish I had known earlier, and a few of which I probably still might not know if not for the help of a chat room of viewers while I played the game. And those live streams are still up on the channel for anyone who's interested. Today, I want to discuss strategies and tips for what I have found to be the best tactical decisions to make in large-scale field battles, as well as some help with the sieges and skill prioritization. To start with, let's discuss open field battles. I'll be breaking away from the script here and discussing this footage in real time as it plays out. Okay, so here is a large-scale field battle where I'm massively outnumbered, but I do have better veterancy for troops. So the first thing that I always do is put my infantry in a shield wall and then put them in the front line here. And I draw the line out as far as I possibly can to give maximum coverage and maximum protection to my archers. Now I also have a shield wall comprised of veterans who also have throwing javelins, which just gives me, even more ranged attack potential when I'm executing the rest of the strategy, but I'll get to that in a minute. And then the second thing that I do is put the archers, or in this case crossbowmen, behind them, and I double tap F3. Right, so I select the archers with key press 2. 1 through 4 are all the different troops on my keyboard. 2 is archers. Select archers and then rapidly double press F3 to put them in standing apart formation. If the archers are all on top of each other, they will very often not shoot because they break their own line of sight or something like that. So if you put them in standing apart, they will all shoot better. Then immediately after that, I put all of my horse archers. I select them with 4 and then press F6 to allow the squad commander to take control. Because horse archers, their default state is just running circles around the enemy units and firing. They're extremely powerful. So normally, right at the beginning of a battle, I always put horse archers on autonomous control, so they can just run circles in the back line and do all sorts of things like that. Then I put the cavalry off to one side. It doesn't matter left or right. I put my cavalry, in this instance, in the trees off to the right. As you can see, they're going up there right now, and I'm going to wait to bring them in until it's better so that they can get to the archers behind the enemy infantry. But the meat and bones of this strategy is, well, you'll see it coming up in a second here. I also killed the enemy commander in the open field. You can go and engage things in front of the infantry, and it usually isn't that much of a problem unless there's a lot of cavalry, in which case you'll usually have to use your own cavalry. But the meat and bones of this strategy now is to run circles around the infantry. So what you're going to see is that the pathing on the enemy infantry is very bad. It can get confused extremely easily. So every time you run circles around them and bring your cavalry across the field back and forth, they will change direction and allow all of your crossbowmen or your archers or whatever your infantry are doing to lay into them from the side where their shields are not even blocking the arrows. So this does require you to have a decent riding skill, a decent horse armor, and very good armor yourself. Otherwise, you could get picked off. If there's enemy spearmen, which there are in this case, they can cause your horse to rear up, which can, make you take a lot of damage if there's enemy units around you. But basically, you're just riding circles around them and then sending your cavalry whenever possible into the back line of archers, which you can see in the distance over there. So my horse archers and my actual cavalry, every time I do a loop, I'm sending them back into the archers, which, decreases enemy morale, makes a lot of them run away, and just overall does a lot of damage. So you can see that they're losing troops extremely quickly. And I think outnumbered in this fight 2 to 1 at least, maybe 3 to 1. But because I'm changing up the infantry pattern and they're just going back and forth chasing me, my archers are getting tons of damage in. My crossbowmen are going to work. And yeah, if they had actually gotten to my line, then they would be killing my infantry units because I have very few relative foot soldiers compared to them. So if these units were to get all the way to my line and overrun them, then I'd be left with only cavalry, and it would take forever to win the fight if I could even win it at all. So what I had to do is execute the strategy and lead them in circles around and around in the middle of the field while all of my archers are going to work. And as you can see, their archers are not even getting shots off. The other thing about enemy archers is that they will readjust their position based on where your cavalry or where the closest units are. So if you ride up to the enemy archers, they will readjust their entire line while not shooting any arrows during that entire time, just because you're close to them. And the same thing works with cavalry. So if you send your cavalry into the enemy archers while leading their infantry in a circle in the middle, like I'm doing right now, you will actually most of the time kill the vast majority of their archers without them ever getting damage on any units at all, while their infantry are dying on top of that. So this strategy will allow you to take down armies that are orders of magnitude larger than your own, if done properly. Now, it's a little bit risky because if you do ride into the middle of the enemy soldiers, you can end up taking a lot of damage. So you do have to have very good armor. And I did it a couple of times here. I risked it because, I don't know, there was no other way to get them to turn towards me instead of charging towards my own units. But it's something you do have to pay attention to, and it does take some practice. But if you're quick swapping back and forth between a bow and a very long polearm, in this case I have a glaive, a war glaive, which is very good, has high damage on top of the fact that it has very long reach, so I can ride in circles and still get kills on the enemy soldiers while they can't even get to me. If you're able to execute it, you can see that you're taking down most of the units before they even get to you. And then incrementally, you'll see a large section of them run away. That's because the morale got so low that they abandoned the fight. So you're not actually going to end up killing every unit here. A lot of them are going to be abandoning the fight before it even really begins, before they've even gotten to your line. So doing this, circular running in circles strategy, dealing with the aggro and the pathing, can allow you to take a lot of prisoners, not have to fight the full scope of the army, and then also not lose hardly any troops. Now, it does depend on difficulty a decent amount. If you're on realistic, you're always going to lose more troops than if you're on easy. But even so, even on easy, if you auto-resolve these fights, you're going to be losing most of your army. If you're auto-resolving, or even if you're just pressing F1, F3, which charges all the units into the enemy, if you're charging anything really into the enemy that isn't cavalry into archers or horse archers running around in circles, you're going to be losing a ton of units. So messing with the pathing, riding in circles, getting them to aggro on you and trading it back and forth, and making sure that you're dealing with the enemy infantry in the middle, out in the open, before moving on to anything else, and then routing their archers with your own cavalry, you can take down fights that otherwise would be extremely difficult to do. So now it's just a matter of riding through and cleaning everything up. Since most things are routed, they have no shield wall, they have no line. What I typically do at that point is I select archers and hit F1, F4. Now you can hit F1, F3, which is charge, and archers sometimes still, operate correctly when they're charging. But if you hit F1, F4, which is advance for archers, they will typically hover at their maximum range and keep shooting their arrows. So you want to do that because otherwise, once in a while, although it seems to have been slightly fixed, they'll run straight into combat and just use their fists or like whatever small dagger they have and have their shield out. And you want them to still be using their arrows because archers in this game really don't end up hitting friendly troops all that often, if they even do at all. So you want to use F1, F4 instead of F1, F3 for charge. And then for footmen, you can have them charge, you can have cavalry charge, but at this point the battle's already won. It's pretty much over. You can just see a wall of green text here because the only way that I would lose that fight is if I didn't deal with their archers and I let their infantry overrun my own infantry, get up to the line, that means, and then surround me, because I had less. I couldn't make a long enough line to actually hold off their entire, large section of infantry units, their shieldmen, their spearmen, etc. So held them off, won that battle absolutely decisively. I think I lost one unit here, and you can do much better than that. I've seen some strategies and some people that do even better than this when they execute their own strategies. So it's by no means the only way to do it. So that's basically the entire strategy I use in open field combat almost every single time. A lot depends on army composition though. If you don't have enough archers, you obviously can't do it. If you don't have cavalry, you can't rout the enemy archers. So in my experience, having a diverse army composition is a really good thing. And other methods, though, they're definitely available. Some players will do truly spectacular things with this system. I can't stress that enough. There's a lot of potential here, and there's no doubt about that. Some easy alternatives that come to mind immediately are such as getting all Kazuic Khans guards and then running circles around the enemy, never losing anyone, and massacring anyone you go up against. I don't know what can be done about this because horse archers were honestly extremely strong. Historically, we can look at Genghis Khan or something like that and what the units allowed him to do from an empire perspective, but an army of horse archers in Mount and Blade is like an unstoppable death ball that really does feel extremely overpowered. Regardless, having an immediate and well-planned strategy as well as memorizing a few of the relevant key press combos can really make the difference between winning and losing battles immediately right off the bat, especially from a troop count perspective, and most definitely when outnumbered or outpositioned. Before getting to sieges and then the importance of athletics, because athletics is singularly the biggest game changer I have run into, and I didn't even start looking at it until over 80 hours into the game, it's time for a sponsored ad read. I know the impulse right here is to click away or skip this stuff, but hang on one second because they've given a pretty massive discount to the UEG community, and today's sponsor is Surfshark, a notable VPN provider. Many people have already heard of a VPN and what it does, but in case you haven't, a VPN is also called a virtual private network, and it's effectively an added layer of security that also allows for a significant number of other functions like geographic location changing, for instance. What does that mean? Well, for one, public Wi-Fi, even private home internet for that matter, is not even close to rock solid or secure. Information is easy to access for anyone with even a rudimentary hacking knowledge, and a VPN helps greatly with that. More interestingly, a VPN can switch your region and help avoid things like censorship. In China, citizens have their internet usage tightly controlled. This is relevant in today's chaotic pandemic world for an absolute army of reasons, and Surfshark, with its VPN services, can get past that type of thing. Not only that, but in different regions, something like Netflix actually has different movies and shows. Since you can change region at any point instead of just seeing what the site has for your country, which it normally would locally do, you can see what Netflix has globally, and the overall list of things that a VPN can do for you is very, very long. Surfshark is also the only VPN provider that I know of which allows for unlimited devices on a single account, so that's very good value. And on top of that, if you use code Echelon, you will get 83% off and 1 month free. I'm very happy to have partnered up with Surfshark for this video. Now back to Mount and Blade. The next major combat focal point is extended sieges. Sometimes enemy settlements especially can climb to very, very high defense numbers. I'm talking in excess of 600 or 700, which makes sieging them an incredibly draining task for even experienced commanders and armies. The best method I have found to combat this is to break all the walls. If you go in with just a ram and ladders, or even a ram for the gates and a couple of siege towers even, you create what I call the meat grinder. The meat grinder is when enemy troops stack up right at the top of these ladders, or at the front of the siege tower, whatever it is, with a shield wall, and just mow down every soldier that climbs into their line because they're often just entering one at a time. This can lead to a huge chunk of even your most elite units getting crushed while the ram finally breaches the gate, or one side eventually and very slowly chips through that wall. But overall, this strategy sucks and can cripple an army outright, especially on realistic difficulty. The solution is pretty simple, trebuchets, but it's not quite as simple as just building them outright. By the time you get to a settlement, it will likely have 3 or 4 catapults or ballistas set up on the walls, which means anything you construct on the front line will get attacked immediately upon completion and die in real time. To get past this, you can queue up 4 trebuchets. Nothing else in the siege menu seems to have any value compared to them. By far, they are the best, and that might get patched, who knows, but as it stands, that's true. And then as soon as the item finishes building, pause the game, click it, and move it to reserve. This should be replicated 4 separate times, and then all at once, while the game is paused, place the trebuchets down in all 4 slots. That will then allow them to start bombarding the walls down without getting focus fired by the stuff that's on the walls fighting back. And the combined power will wreck through the enemy ballistas or catapults very quickly. This turns the siege into a bit of a waiting game. Simply continue until the walls have reached 0 health in a couple of different places, and make sure that your army cohesion, in the army panel at the top there is an option to spend influence to increase cohesion. Just make sure that cohesion does not run out, because if it does, that's very awkward and your army fragments all over the map. But if you do this, you'll be good to go. The trebuchets will kill off some of the defenders, which is good. They'll create 2 holes in the wall itself and make it possible to simply rush in immediately and avoid the meat grinder. It's not always possible to do this. Maybe you need to execute a siege quickly and only have time for a ram or a siege tower, but this will very often save you hundreds of troops and make it possible to keep going afterward instead of having to wait and heal or find more units and recharge the army. Now, as a final tip, I want to focus on athletics. For my first 3 playthroughs, a couple of which did not get pushed to absolute completion but still amounted to dozens of hours each, I focused exclusively on horse combat. The game gives you a horse from the start, and organically training your riding skill makes it hard to picture anything else being viable. There are certain areas where athletics will be trained, like tournaments, but it's marginal compared to how fast your horse skill will go up when every open field battle is begun on horseback, and the best strategy that I have found on top of that involved kiting units in the midsection of the zone on your horse at full gallop. However, if you are willing or able, taking that horse away from your character can make you an absolute powerhouse in all other combat scenarios. Side by side right now is a clip of high athletics with low relative weight to your character's armor, and low athletics with heavy armor on. As your athletics increases, you become much more agile, obviously, but the bonuses here are substantial. A character with high athletics who has purposely neglected the advantage of a horse can actually move and swing so quickly they can run through combat in an almost invincible way. This is not even close to maximum athletics here on the screen either, and can be achieved in a matter of hours. However, with another few sessions of grinding, I think the discrepancy between your own abilities and the abilities of enemy soldiers might become even more defined. This is less of a tip and more of a personal realization I had not too long ago. Sacrificing your early horse advantage to become an absolute wrecking ball of footwork, speed, and athleticism makes the gameplay so much better, it's hard to describe. It won't be for everyone though. Taking on the cavalry role and also the benefit to being mounted for map movement and other bonuses can be very, very appealing. But the point of this one was to say that no one should be neglecting athleticism, because more so than most other skills in the entire game, the passive gain on it is extremely powerful. The added bonus to this is that everything in the combat is momentum based, so the faster you move, that means the faster your sword is moving and the more damage you will deal. So athleticism, in a roundabout way, as far as I can tell, actually increases the amount of damage that you can output by a huge, absolutely colossal margin, because not only are you swinging faster and getting more attacks in, but you're moving faster while you're executing those swings, which means more damage from each and every attack. That's it for today though. Hopefully these combat tips help some players out, and I'm pretty sure as time goes on I'll be making more guides for Mount & Blade 2 because I'm very much in love with it. It's an excellent game. If you want support, there are links down below. Again, Surfshark has a huge promotion with our channel if using code Echelon, and there are other things too like social media, merchandise, Patreon, and another YouTuber to support named Axial GT. Please go subscribe to him. But I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching, and have a nice night.